She said, we are a small group today. A few people have been asked in advance if they would share some things at different points, but everyone is certainly welcome to chat out or speak up at any time, and we would love to hear your comments. So joining us today, besides Patsy and myself, we have Astrid Leiden from the Department of Ed. We have Allie Riley from Neighborhood House. We have Teresa Luther Dolan from the Department of Corrections. And I think Melody might be joining us. And they're going to be sharing some information about different activities they've done this spring that relate to ACES. So we just have a few different, our objectives and agenda kind of overlap today. We're hoping to give some updates about ACES activities and resources. We're going to share ACES-related data from the statewide PD survey that people took this spring. We might have a few success stories to share on transitions integration. And at any time, we encourage you to connect with other leaders by asking questions, sharing comments and ideas. That is why we get together. So please take advantage of that as much as you can or would like to during this webinar today. All right. If you've been in our other webinars this year, you know I always have a quote that I put in. So today's quote is, "Starting strong is good, finishing strong is epic." And I thought that was appropriate now that we're at the end of the year, wrapping up our ACES work for this year. I definitely feel like we're finishing strong. And I want to thank you all for all the support you've put into making ACES happen this year. So speaking about how ACES has been going for you, I'd like to invite people to maybe chat out for a minute and share any thoughts or any information about an ACES related activity that has been planned or implemented in your program or in your own classroom or with the teachers with whom you work. So we're going to pause for just a minute, give people an opportunity to chat out, or you can unmute yourself and share. And we're interested in hearing about anything that's been going on. PLCs, using the observation tool, reading some of the resources, looking at some of the resources in the library, anything that might have been going on in your program. Okay. I will share that in my program in Minneapolis, Adult Ed, we have been trying to come up with a way to incorporate ACES and the ACES observation tool with our existing observation framework, which is the Danielson framework. And in a minute or two, I'll show you a tool that we came up with for something we're calling learning walks, which is a way to do peer observation mostly and to kind of blend together those two observational frameworks, the one we have from our district and then the ACES one that was created. Does anyone else have anything to share? All right. So then we'll just move into updates. So on the left side of your screen, you'll see information about some sessions that have already taken place. Allie presented on an ACES topic at COABE this year. Teresa, Astrid, and Patsy did some presentations at the Corrections Education Conference. And then Suzanne, Kelly, and I all did different spring regional events where we focused on the navigating systems section of the TIF. So I'm going to pause and let Allie and Teresa talk for just a quick minute or however long they'd like about their different ACES sessions. You guys there?
Yep, I can do
Okay.
it. So I actually did pretty much the navigating systems lens workshop at COABE, but it was obviously tweaked a little bit because none of them had been what's it called? Uh, the door of ACES and the TIFF hadn't been open to COABE participants much before. Um, and I actually got a lot of really good feedback about how this works for teachers and administrators, because that's kind of how I tackled it. The stuff that I added was how to maybe TIFF your curriculum, how to identify things that you're already doing in your curricula. Um, so yeah, that's what I did.
Great. So how many people would you say attended your session?
I actually had 20, which I was surprised because it was the last day. It was the last day of the conference, and 20 people got there and
Okay.
stayed. Yeah.
Oh, that's great, Allie. Wonderful. And I know you shared with me some information that you brought back from COABE kind of in general, which I'll
Mhm.
share in a little bit. But were there any kind of standout sessions for you? Sorry, I keep changing the screen. Okay. Were there any sessions that kind of stood out for you or any themes that you kind of noticed this year?
Well, I think the theme that we can feel pretty good about is that it sounds like WIOA, that Minnesota in general is more on top of WIOA than most states, with the exception of Texas, because they changed a bunch of stuff early on. But that and then really implementing and identifying soft skills, the identification of soft skills and transitions are very preliminary from what I've noticed or what I noticed at COABE.
So you're saying that a document like the TIFF, that a lot of it has to do with soft skills, is sort
Right.
of a step ahead of what a lot of programs have right now?
And a lot of states, yeah.
Okay, but there's interest in that, just
A lot of
identifying
them.
those. Okay, okay.
Yeah, I actually had a woman, and we can talk about this later, but I had a woman come up to me and ask if I wanted to present in New Mexico at their transitions conference in Albuquerque.
Nice.
And
Are you
like
going?
this. Well, I have to figure out dates and if I can swing it, but I'm gonna try and get them to pay my conference fee, so
Nice. All right, excellent.
keep you
Okay,
updated.
thank you. That's great. Teresa, do you want to talk a little bit about the corrections conference?
Yes, I,
Great.
I can you hear me?
You're a little
Um,
faint.
I am. Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's better.
Okay, good. Um, so the Corrections Education Conference, we did two different sessions about ACEs, and one I did with Patsy and Astrid. So Patsy, if I forget anything that you think is important to mention, please jump in. Um, it, the ACES 101, what's all the buzz about session with Astrid and Patsy, we did that one for an audience of career tech teachers and our guests from other states. And I would say mostly the other state that was represented was Iowa at that session. And of course, it was a brief overview of the ABE standards and how ACES meets the professional soft skills content standards. And, it was an overview and how the project has evolved. And one of the things that we noticed is our guests from Iowa were really, really interested in tipping, and they
Mm.
wanted more examples. And of course, we didn't plan to do that. We didn't think that this audience would want that much information. It turns out they did. But we did go to the Atlas site where the ACES resources are, and I know that they're probably checking it out as we speak because they were really, really excited about it. And a few of the people from that session came to our session the next day, the ACES panel, and that was really geared for our experienced ACES people who have participated in the PLCs in the past year. And yet we still had some newcomers in that group that wanted to know more about it. The panel was made up of 4 different teachers in DOC, and actually one of the teachers was a career tech teacher. who had been part of the PLC. So she just really was interested in what we do with tipping and embraced it and was using it in her computer classes that she teaches. So her example was developing a future pathway, and the lesson was networking for jobs. One of the other teachers, he's an ABE teacher, and he's also what we call our CIP, which is called Challenge Incarceration Program. And that's a special program for our offenders who want to complete their term in shorter time, and it's very much like a military academy. So they're very intense in the classroom. They have to raise their hand. I mean, they get really engaged, but they have to follow all the rules like they're in boot camp. And I actually observed one of his lessons, and the one that he talked about during this panel was the SQ3R, the study skills lesson, where he's using effective communication, critical thinking, and of course academic language skills. His students got one of the lessons that I observed, not this one, but another one that I have observed with this teacher using TIP, he uses it all the time, was learning how to use the dictionary better, and understanding what all the symbols mean. And it sounds simple, but when he actually started doing more critical thinking skills and learning strategies with the class, they started to forget they're supposed to raise their hand. They would answer questions and just speak out, and he'd have to correct them. And I felt so bad for them, but yet that's the way that class is supposed to be run. And it was neat to see that they were really engaged using more tip strategies. One of the other teachers on the panel is Sue Hinkle from up in Rush City. She had also participated in the career-focused basic skills text-wise instruction with LaGuardia last year, and she was in the advanced program this year. When we were in it last year, we were introduced to the growth versus fixed mindset. So she developed a TIF lesson with effective communications, learning strategies, critical thinking around the brain and learning, and the growth versus fixed mindset. So she shared that example, and the people in the audience were really, really interested in that. And we couldn't spend enough time on it, but it's a really cool lesson that she came up with. And then, of course, our other teacher used critical thinking and math. And the focus of the lesson was fractions. And that part of the session, what we did was took the audience through a sample lesson. We gave them the tools that he was using, and we told them to tip the lesson, because obviously these were supposed to be experienced tiffers. Well, the guests from Iowa didn't know anything about it, so we kind of had to shift gears, but it still was an interesting experience for them, and they got an idea of how we go about tipping lessons. And I just want to add one more thing about COABE. I was at the COABE conference as well. I was representing on a panel for GED for the top corrections in the state that have the highest passing rate. Actually, Minnesota has the highest passing rate in corrections for the GED. And they wanted us to talk about what are some of our strategies in the classroom. And of course, I brought up ACES. They were extremely interested in what we're doing and how that all works. And I, shared examples of what we do in the classroom and how it's integrated in all levels of our instruction. And we actually have a poster of all the ACES categories. During our PLCs last fall and early winter, we made posters for all of our teachers. And one of our teachers actually starts out his lessons every day with, these are the life skills all students are expected to possess and are the driving force for this class. So all throughout his lessons every day, he's pointing to that poster and saying, this is the skill we're doing right now. Or he asked the students to pick out what skill are we covering in this activity or this lesson. So it's really exciting that this stuff is happening, and it's all because of going to conferences and sharing the word. And I'd say, just what Allie had said earlier, the theme that I noticed at COABE too was Minnesota's really on our mark. We're already in place. We've got a lot in place for the new WIOA.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Teresa. It is really very cool. I was trying to just process everything you were saying. It sounds like some really, really neat lessons were being shared, and I'd like to come back in a little bit to talk about how possibly people could upload and share some of those great lessons with others through OER Commons. Your growth mindset lesson in particular sounded so neat. So thanks for sharing that with us. And I know other people are chatting out comments too about how impressive it is that you've got the highest passing rate of all DOCs in the nation. So kudos to you and all your team. So those are some things that have taken place. And now on the other side of your screen, you'll see some upcoming sessions for Summer Institute. So these are proposed. They have not been accepted yet, but there is going to be a panel discussion about sort of what to do. So you've maybe done PLCs with your staff. You are maybe trying to use the observation tool, but once you've got some training in ACES, what can you continue to do with your staff to keep the work going? So that's one session. Liz Andrus has proposed a session about using portfolios to teach self-management skills. And Heather and I submitted a proposal that was based on some of the PD survey data that will actually talk about using ACES and the TIF to plan, implement, and evaluate a lesson. So lots of different things to choose from. Is anyone else planning to present at Summer Institute? And I wasn't aware of it. If so, you're more than welcome to chat out what you're planning to do, and we'd love to hear about it. So be sure to spread the word about Summer Institute in general and the ACES sessions that will be happening. I think there will also be some ACES and transitions related posters during the poster session on Thursday.
So Stephanie, I'll just chime in that not directly ACES related, but Astrid and I will be doing just an introductory session on the content standards as well. Just an overview for those folks who perhaps have joined ABE in the recent year or just want a refresher on what are the 3 sets of skills that we teach in ABE and what are the 3 documents that define those skills. So a good sort of overall introduction that probably no one on this call needs, but if you know of people who have joined your staff in the recent months, it might be a good one to send them to.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. All right, so then we will continue. There we go. Okay, so one thing I referred to a little while ago I have mentioned actually before during our leaders webinars, but I didn't have it to share, was this idea of how to use our ACES observation tool and kind of blend it together with an existing framework, because some of the feedback we've gotten has been that if a district already requires a particular observation tool, how do you also incorporate ACES? And so in our program, we have we use the Danielson framework of standards of effective instruction, and we do formal evaluations using that, but we're also trying to do more informal or peer evaluations. Yes, let me show you that. Okay. And so this is what this looks like. We call it a learning walk tool. And we went through and we looked at the areas where SOEI and ACES kind of overlap. And I just took a screenshot to show you one, but one of the domains for SOEI is plans, units, and lessons effectively. That's an indicator in domain 1. And so we say that's the SOEI lens. Well, what's the ACES lens? And it's about making sure your learning objectives connect to a program or student goal, and making sure that your lessons are reflect the target environment. So this is just a quick look. I did include the entire observation tool in the webinar material. So if anyone's interested in looking at it, this is something we're doing. It's new, so we haven't used it so much. I did participate in a learning walk this spring with some colleagues, and I think it was useful to have both lenses available to kind of guide the discussion after we did our observations. So this is just kind of a response to the question of how do you use more than one observation tool. Okay. All right. Oops. And all right. And we are also going to talk about another evaluation tool that Allie and some people working with her at Neighborhood House have come up with. And it is about using soft skills. So as we heard, one of the themes at COABE is about how to evaluate and identify soft skills. And so here is a tool that might work to do that. And it is also in your webinar materials, so it can be downloaded from the materials tab. And if you don't know where that is, it is on your control panel. A little bit, it's between the audio button and the chat button. So there's several different documents in there. And Allie, do you want to talk a little bit about this tool and how you're using it? Okay.
So currently this one is still in the development process. As you can see, it's pretty basic. What we did with our project is I actually had 2 grad students from the University of Minnesota who are working on evaluation, and they came and kind of for their assignment, it was to use us as a client and help us develop evaluation tools. Tricky thing about having students do work like this is that they want to do everything all at once. And so some of the tools that they came up with were less evaluation tools and more classroom activity work. But overall, we got some really interesting stuff. I'm not sure if you have another slide for this, but I had.
Oh, I can show the whole thing. Would that be good?
No. There was another. What was it called? That's fine.
I have everything that you gave me ready to show. Which document do you want me to share?
Is there a soft skills survey in there?
This is the lesson plan.
That's fine. The lesson plan. So the lesson plan's fine. You can leave that one up.
Sorry. I have.
All right. So lots of stuff.
Sorry, Allie.
Okay. No, you're fine. So the lesson plan was kind of a way that we wanted to figure out what soft skills beginning students already had and how to improve those. And so they went through identifying reasons for attending English class, and that can be used as kind of like the personal education plan. And then we decided to ask students how often they use certain things for navigating systems, because we were kind of focusing on navigating systems. So how often do you use the bus? How often do you go grocery shopping alone in another language that's not your native language, usually English? And through this lesson plan, you're able to kind of watch students and assess where they're at and where they self-identify, and then you can revisit these types of things later. So overall, the project is, the students are finished. They've given us a lot of starting tools, but I'm going to have a lot of work to do to kind of tweak it for lots of different contexts and figure out what is the best way to kind of gather data on it. And then if you want to show that the thing that you just had up.
This one?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay.
So this was from COABE, And I'm looking for something, so apparently CASAS, and I don't know if you guys have looked at this at all, but CASAS and LRI combine to do soft skills assessment. It's specifically for workforce assessment. Or workforce skills assessment, and so there's a test that you do, and then they rate you on certain things. So if you can scroll down a little bit on this one, because you can see the soft skills down there. So personal quality, they have integrity, responsibility, self-esteem, and not all of those relate specifically to TIF skills, but I think if we use a model like this, eventually we can try and assess for TIF skills. The kind of downside of this model, this CASAS model, is the test was very subjective. It wasn't, I mean, as soft skills are, but the test was watching a video and choosing the best option for someone in the workplace to proceed. So it would have a video of someone that's supposed to tell their coworker to stop using their phone on the job, and you have to choose how to do that. The tricky thing about that is you can have lots of different people who would say, oh, of course I would do the right thing, but actually when it comes to doing the actual thing in a workplace, they would act differently. So I think the way they assess leaves a lot to be desired, but the way they measure and give feedback is a really good start. So that's kind of like the three big things that I'm working on with assessment. I don't have a finished product yet, but I'll keep working on it.
Thanks,
Does anyone have
Alex.
questions about? Yeah, does anyone have questions about any of these things? Through three random.
I guess so. Just to kind of maybe talk through it for my own benefit. So these would all be different ways a teacher would maybe evaluate how well their students are doing with soft skills, right? And these are trickier, I mean, obviously, to evaluate than more academic skills, because it's not like you could do just a vocabulary test or a kind of a different kinds of things. So these are more observational, like ways that you would kind of see the students demonstrate the skills and keep track of them. So you are working to develop different tools that teachers can use to see how well their students are internalizing these different soft skills.
Yeah, both that, and then with the first tool that I showed, kind of showing the comfort level of students. Oh, maybe I didn't have the right one up. So showing students can self-identify kind of comfort levels of doing certain things, and then we can attribute that to certain soft skills. And if they self-identify comfort in, or lack of comfort in navigating the system of riding a bus early on, but then self-identify improvement in that ability later, that would be something that a program could use to, I mean, there are so many ways we can use that data. You can use it for funders, you can use it to improve your curricula, you can use it to, like if someone's not getting those skills but you already had a unit on it, and you can use it to identify what skills you're not teaching. So it's a big idea, it's a big project, and that's why it's not done yet. But yeah, so it's kind of that two-pronged approach. So yeah, so Astrid just asked if it would be used as a self-evaluation of sorts as well. Yep, the plan, the big pie-in-the-sky idea that I had that kind of veered off topic was I wanted a personal education plan that we could use to, like at intake, to identify certain soft skills that people are lacking, and then revisit that after they take their next CASAS test, and revisit in person and find out where they're going and where they're at with those things.
So right now, like the one I'm showing is specifically about navigating systems. In the future, would there maybe be something like this for a few of the other categories? Astrid just asked that, yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yep, that's the hope. And I think even with this one you're showing, I hope to have it more instead of one category to two instead of just two clumps of words to kind of stretch out and be able to make a rubric for those
Okay.
areas. So
Okay.
this, I mean, everything I'm showing, with the exception of that CASAS thing, is all the work of both Rachel Schmidt and Christina Field, who are at the U of M doing masters in evaluation and some adult learning stuff. So they were really helpful, really responsive. It was just a big, kind of confusing project to do. So we didn't quite end up with the exact tools that we were looking for, but I have a really good start.
Thanks for sharing this. I know first it's kind of hard to talk about something that you didn't create yourself, but also I just appreciate your being willing to kind of answer our questions and share something that's
Sure.
in development. So
Yeah,
I
and
think
I was
really
with
cool.
it every step of the way, so I should be able to answer other questions about it as well.
Okay. And does anybody have some other questions that they'd like to ask or share? And I think I might have, yeah, I put this document, the one that you can see now, I put this document, I believe, in with the webinar material. So if it's something you want to look at more closely or keep a copy of, you have access through it through the webinar materials.
Yeah, and it should be easy to edit. So if you have a better way to use it that kind of moves the skills around or something else, you can for sure tweak it. There's no like
Okay.
copyright or final final edits on it.
Okay. And Allie, I want to thank you because you are beautifully launching us into our next thing here as I get back to my slides talking about copyright, which has to do with sharing lessons using OER Commons. So one thing that has come up in several different projects I've been working on recently has to do with this idea of how do we share lessons that have been created to support these different initiatives. So ACES is one, there could be STAR, it could be M&I. So we've also been doing, people are working on contextualized lesson planning. So where can a person go to view these created lessons, share lessons that they have created? And it is not maybe a perfect solution, but one thing that exists is something called OER Commons. So an OER is an open educational resource, and OER Commons is a very large searchable database. It's a library where you can find everything from a single lesson that's maybe some instructions and a worksheet to whole online courses. And everything that is on OER Commons is open, which means it does not have it's under a Creative Commons license for copyright. So anything that a person uses from OER Commons can be downloaded and used as is, or it can also be what's called remixed, which is if I wanted to take a piece of a worksheet I made and mash it together with a piece of a worksheet someone else created, I can do that. Or it can be completely edited and redefined for use in your classroom. So if you have never looked at OER Commons, I would definitely recommend going there. It looks like something like this. This is a screenshot of the page. And Heather Turngren, who has been doing work with OER Commons for the past couple of years, has uploaded some of our ACES lesson plans. So the ACES lesson plans for developing a future pathway that we developed for the TIF Lens series are up there now. And I believe she's also uploaded the navigating systems lessons that we developed. And so in OER Commons, you can search by a topic, by a keyword. You can tag lessons and that makes it easier for other people to find something in the future. So if you come across a lesson that you think would work for transitions or for workforce readiness or for ABE, you can tag it with those words, and that makes it easier for other people searching for similar lessons to find it in the future. So here is what it looks like, and then here, if you click where it says view this resource, this is what you see. So Heather has uploaded the lessons in PDF format to make them available, and then she gives a description under the summary section on the left that shows what these resources are and who they were developed for. So this is just one sort of way that people might be able to start creating some transfer among these different lessons that are being developed around the state. I am happy to answer any questions about OER Commons if anyone has them. If anyone has thoughts, feel free to chat them out or speak up now. Okay. Astrid's asking, has anyone used or posted on OER Commons? I was thinking, Teresa, and I know, I mean, I'm not suggesting you do this yourself necessarily, but some of those lessons you said were presented at the conference by your advanced TIFers, like the growth mindset lesson, I think would be an excellent thing to put up on OER Commons for other people to be able to use. It is not difficult to submit a lesson, and it is something that some people around the state have been working with Susan Wettenkamp-Brandt from the MLC in kind of a working group to explore it. And so there are people who have familiarity with it and who would be probably open to helping if you wanted to try uploading things that you have created. So Alyssa says she's never heard of it. She's excited to try it. So I'm glad someone learned something new today. And if you have any other thoughts, be sure to share. It's a great thing. This is now up and running, a great start. Yes, for sharing ACES, North Star, and CCRS lessons, yes. And speaking of creating and sharing lessons, another thing we wanted to talk a little bit about today, it's come up in some of our other webinars this year, is what we've been calling the LaGuardia Training, which focuses on career-focused basic skills curriculum development. Many of you who are on this webinar actually participated in this. And for those of you who are not as familiar with it, we'll spend a few minutes talking about it. Before I go on, Teresa says she needs to check out the site from one of our facilities. Yes, I know that's always the issue. We definitely want to find a site to share our lessons. Yes, so yeah, I have no idea about accessibility from inside the DOC, but hopefully we'll find a way to make it work, because I think the lessons you're creating sound brilliant, so it'd be great to share. So one of the things that has come out of our most recent round of LaGuardia training, so we wrapped up our LaGuardia programming for this year last week on Thursday and Friday. And the people who, there were some people who did it this year as a first-year cohort, and there were some people who participated this year as an advanced cohort group. And those in the advanced training had participated last year as well. And so one of the things that kind of came out of the discussion this year is about answering this question, how do ACES and CCRS fit together? How do our standards fit together? And one of the answers that became very clear to us is that both sets of standards are needed to plan career-focused basic skills curriculum. ACES provides the professional and effective skills, and CCRS provides the academic content. So here on the screen, this is just a capture of what the lesson planning template, part of what the lesson planning template looks like that we were using through LaGuardia. There is, in the materials, there is a full version of this lesson planning template. It is the one we were using this year with LaGuardia. It is possible it will be changed a little bit in the future, but feel free to check it out from the materials tab. Patsy says that, she says, Teresa, I definitely pursue OER Commons with your tech folks. It's going to be a tremendous go-to place as time goes on. That's what we're hoping. Okay, so this is a blank version of the template, and then I got permission from my colleague Heather Turngren to share sort of a filled-in version that she submitted with her lesson this year. So Heather has done a lot of work around career pathway classes, and this particular lesson comes from a unit she developed for students who are looking to become certified food managers, passing the certificate exam. And so on the left, you'll see the different CCRS standards that she incorporated in her unit. And then on the right, you'll see the different TIF skills. And so what we just want to kind of show here is that CCRS and ACES, they're not separate things, and we don't need to necessarily work on one or the other in isolation. We shouldn't be working on them in isolation. As we've heard during this webinar, soft skills are something that's really important. They're connected to WIOA. And of course, those more academic skills are certainly necessary too. Yeah, this is for a full unit. That's right. Any sense how much time for this unit? This unit, I think, is at least an 8-week course. So that's a good question. Obviously, or maybe it's not obvious, but if it were just a lesson, we would probably have a few fewer standards. Ah, thanks. Heather's here. This is about a 36 to 40-hour lesson. Heather, do you want to say anything about this? It's a unit, not a lesson. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Hi, you guys. I'm here, but there are some other people who are in the room, so there might be some back noise. But yeah, this is incorporating the core text for the food manager certification, but it also is including speaking and listening activities. Critical thinking is really important. Learning strategies, ways that students can be remembering the information, and reading and taking notes. There's a lot of developing a future pathway because we work on networking and other things that are part of navigating systems to get their final certification. I hope that makes it clear.
It does. Thank you. And I'm sorry I kept saying lesson, not unit. That's my own thick head here. So again, a full version with all of the different pieces for this lesson template is in the materials. You can find it there. Otherwise, I will show you some photos from last week. So here we have Melody, who I know joined us this afternoon. She was also talking about an introductory level food course for her lesson for LaGuardia. So she's on the left, Heather's on the right. So Heather's talking about her unit. I think Melody was more than a single lesson, but maybe a little less than a full unit. I'm not sure. And so these are just some pictures. The final product for the LaGuardia training is you put together a poster that you share that shows what your unit or lesson look like and the different pieces and any student work you might have. So that's what these pictures represent. And I am wondering if Allie or Teresa or Heather or I think Patrick's joining us. If anyone would like to share a little bit about the LaGuardia training, about any future crossover with ACES, we could, yep, we could pause for just a minute. Melody, so what's kind of nice is we have different perspectives. Melody being a teacher, Heather being a teacher, Allie and Teresa being more supervisory. So would anyone like to say anything before we continue about what it was like to do the training for you? Any connections you've made?
Yeah, I can chat real quick.
Okay,
So
great.
actually, to be completely honest, I didn't actually finish all of the coursework that I was supposed to. Stuff just happened with life and work, and I didn't get to finish it all. But I did attend all the webinars and the in-person workshops. And I think the really helpful thing for this for managers was when we actually met and talked about kind of conferences and how to work with students in a very so if our context is to make them ready for college, they should be ready to have advisors and work on goals. And so I kind of like planned out how we do that with students and thought about that pretty hard. So that was one of the main takeaways I had as a program support person for that. But I think the overall layout of it was not really geared towards program managers or supervisors.
Right. And I think other people felt similarly, and I both mean about the manager participation and this idea of the importance of having a navigator to help students with goal setting and kind of the logistics of how to move forward with their plans. I heard that from other people as well. And I know Teresa said she'd be willing to share, and I know Melody might want to as well. So, anybody?
Oh, I can go next. This is Teresa. We had at least 3 sites out of 4 of our sites that are also adult diploma programs. And so we had teachers from 3 out of those 4 sites that participated. So a couple of them were in the advanced and the others were in this New Year's cohort. And we were focusing a lot on developing a future pathway and navigating systems and self-management in both of the levels of the cohorts that we worked in. And it was it's also our narrative year, so we're using the template that you use for adult diploma, which is also in the 5-year narrative that has the sections for what ACES are you embedding in your different levels of instruction and what CCRS are you embedding. And this whole concept of contextualized instruction just made so much sense to our teachers who were participating because they've been working so much with ACES and of course CCRS because of their adult diploma work, and it just all made sense. It all fit together for them, and both of their projects and units that they developed were around developing a future pathway. And yes, Navigator would be great. We don't actually have that type of person in place in the DOC, but we do have another career tech program, a career tech course that's called Career and Employability Skills, and that is taught by a career tech teacher. And in some way we're going to try to integrate what they do into the coursework that we're developing in ACES. So we're merging all our resources, and it's just great that we have all of these different ways to look at the same thing, helping our learners prepare for transition.
That's great. And so, okay, thank you, Teresa. And Patrick has chatted out that the CCPI training, which is this, the LaGuardia training, was very interesting. The programs thought P2P and the site-specific opportunity with my program located on the community college campus are readily adaptable to contextualized learning. I still have a lot to learn about incorporating the ACES pieces and just as importantly how to measure those aspects in the programming and with evidence in student learning. Luckily, I have a couple staff who seem to have a good grasp. Yes, quite a few folks from Metro North were involved and doing good work. Wonderful. So, Melody or Heather, do either of you have anything to share? If you don't, that's okay.
Sure, this is Melody, and I can speak out a little bit to the teacher perspective of going through this process. And so, yes, I just echo with what a lot of Teresa was saying. And Heather, thanks for paving the way and planning a ton of lessons and a whole unit and showing that it's really possible. For those of us who were not in the advanced group, just looking at how do we use this framework to build one lesson with all of these components. It was helpful just to keep that focused, but now I'm seeing it able to be applied out to so many other course offerings that our program is doing. So the way that we approached this in my particular setting is our teachers are trained in ACES now. We are incorporating the North Star digital literacy piece as well, in addition to CCRS, and all of our teachers feeling a bit overwhelmed about how do you focus. And I appreciated what you said, Stephanie, about it is not in isolation, that really the best way to offer this is to focus it and have it be one cohesive area of study. And that's exactly what the CCRS training is provided, talking about a line of inquiry. And with the contextualized instruction from LaGuardia, they're framing it with essential questions. But basically, it's that the teacher has on the front end thought out well about where we're taking students through an area of learning and connecting it to an important area of workplace learning or for use in higher ed. And so in my program, we're 60% attendance requirement, open enrollment. How can that work? Well, we've built this unit out, and when students are there, 60% of the time they're moving closer and closer towards an end goal. They can participate in the assessments and the pieces they are there for, but it is cohesive, and I just think there's a lot of power in that for even when students are available, that they can participate in what it's in front of them, but that there's really a plan. I know where we're going with this, and it thoroughly works with select standards of CCRS or in ACES or in North Star. So our program has a food manager certificate being piloted, but the group that I work with were not eligible for that class because their reading level was just a bit lower on the tape to meet the threshold. So I worked through this LaGuardia experience preparing an introduction to food safety, and very generalized for my students so that they could talk about food safety in their homes as well. So it was applicable if they were in my ESL class, they are working on this unit. And I've been so impressed to see that the rationale, I didn't have to do a ton of that. I thought I'd have to do a lot, like this is why we're studying this area of food safety, but it's so applicable to the rest of their lives, and a lot of science work coming in. These are pre-GED students, and of course the ACES, North Star, and CCRS as well. So I am excited about this as an educator, and I'm just so excited what my students are doing with it. So I couldn't say enough about it. It takes a lot of work at the front end, but then it's really very focused, and students are appreciating that as well.
Thank you, Melody. And I was just chatting this out, but one of the things I loved about your poster and your presentation was those different big sticky papers on the wall all around you that represent your different kind of class discussions and share outs. I liked how you kind of started, one of your early kind of introductions to this was getting students to talk about what foods they did or did not eat in their culture at home, and just making all of the relevant connections to them, talking about a time they got sick from food and what happened. So one thing that I was just thinking of when you were talking is what a great way your lessons here, yours and Heather's, showcase how we can be incorporating these important ACEs and transition skills from the start, which is what we've said all along. So your lessons kind of representing the lower end of that spectrum and Heather's at the higher end, but it's wonderful to see that full range. And I also appreciated what you said about the CCRS connection with the line of inquiry, along with the essential questions, which is something that we will be talking about more next year and as we continue this work with contextualization. So thank you all for sharing. Are there any final comments about this? Yes. Thanks to Heather, thanks to Melody, thanks to everyone who took time to participate and share their ideas about the CCPI training. Okay, we are going to move on because, as always, I have too much to say. So Patsy is going to talk for just a couple minutes, or as long as she needs, about some new resources that are available from links.
Great, thank you. So I'm actually going to chat out the link here in case people want to visit. So this is actually a series of resources that are available now from Links, which is the national Octave-sponsored kind of resource library online. Among other things, they have chat rooms and all sorts of professional development opportunities through Links on the website. This, in particular, this website that I just sent to you is a link to a new suite of materials from Links around adult ESL. And I wanted to point out one in particular to this group, and that's a couple of new publications around preparing English learners for work and career pathways. And even if you don't have English learners in your classrooms, or you see yourself not as an English teacher or an ESL teacher, I would argue that the content of each of these publications is relevant for any adult basic education learner. They do happen to have a focus on kind of the language lift needed for these students, but in general, I think anyone would benefit from reading these materials. So what you see when you get there, I don't know, Stephanie, if you want to just click on the link, I can show people how to get to them. Thanks. So you'll go to the links page, and then if you scroll down just a smidge, what you'll see are the 3 suites of materials. Perfect, right there. So there's 3 different sets and represented by 3 images here. The first is meeting the language needs of today's English learner, and that's really focused on increasing the rigor of adult ESL. The idea that we need to now, with the forces like WIOA and career pathways and college and career readiness standards implementation, et cetera, that doing more than life skills perhaps that we had been doing in the past with our English learners, and really getting them ready for post-secondary, for workforce, and to be implementing those higher level skills earlier. So that's the first suite of materials. There's an issues brief and a companion learning resource that's a much more extensive publication. They're all what are called digital magazines, which means you can click on stuff within them, so they're actually more useful in their online versions than if you were to print them. Although, printing if clicking online is an issue in your facilities or your schools, or you have any concerns about accessing technology. I know in some of the DOC places, for example, certainly the printed version would be helpful for teachers as well. The second suite is around integrating digital literacy into English language instruction. And then the third one is the one I think that for this group will be of particular interest, and it has to do with preparing English learners for work and career pathways. If you just want to click that link actually for us, Stephanie, and you can see what you have to choose from here. Stephanie, can you just click that third link?
I'm sorry, Patsy.
That's okay. Thank you.
Go.
And then if you just scroll down a little bit, you'll see there's an issue brief. Again, I don't know if anyone are familiar with those old Kayla briefs, but they're short, 6, 7, 8 pages, kind of the key ideas on what people who are working with learners getting ready for work and career pathways, really the nuggets. What do they need to know? So that's a great, particularly for newer teachers or teachers who are new to this particular area of work, is a great reference. The professional development module is completed but not yet available. It's being used for some targeted TA in a handful of states. Minnesota is not among those states, so it'll be available to us as well as the rest of the country in the fall. And then the companion learning resource is just excellent. It's about a 60-page document. It's a digital magazine, so again, lots of clickable links, lots of links that lead you to lesson plans or to more information or sometimes to full-blown curricula. What's cool about this is that actually ACES and TIFF is all around. The author, Jamie Adelson Goldstein, is familiar with TIFF, has been here in Minnesota, and just thinks very, very highly of that work. And I think we got a picture of Stephanie on one of those pages too, don't we? So she's highlighted lessons that were developed here in Minnesota for this national publication, and it is now available. So you can see, thanks Stephanie, if you just want to page through a little bit and give people a sense of what it's got here. So again, useful for anyone working with adult learners, although it does have a specific focus on working with ESL. So identifying future pathways, and then it highlights kind of different models. There she is. So here's a lesson that we filmed in Minneapolis, and these photographs are stills from that video. With permission, obviously. We knew she was going to do that. So lots of great stuff here, and just a real jolt, I think, to us in Minnesota to see this being recognized as something useful on such a large stage. So I would recommend.
Great. Thank you, Patsy. And for anyone who wants to be able to access these links later, if you didn't copy them down, the slides from this PowerPoint are also available in the materials, so you could certainly download and save those, so you would have all these links and things for future reference. Is there any comments or questions or anything people would like to say about these new resources here? Okay. It looks like an amazing resource. Yes. All right. Well, I'm just going to back out of here for a minute and go back to where we've been. And again, here are those links which you could access from the materials in the Materials tab. All right, so the next thing we will be talking about here is some data from the statewide PD survey, and I think Astrid is going to talk us through some of this. We are going to be focusing right now on the admin responses from the ACES training and resources section.
Yes, thanks, Stephanie. So as I think you all are probably aware of, we conduct an annual statewide PD survey of administrators, instructors, and support staff around the state to identify people's professional development needs and challenges. And this year we had a great response. We had over 500 people respond to that survey, and almost 100 of those people were administrators. One section of the administrator section of the survey focused on their familiarity and use of ACES training and resources. So we wanted to focus in on that data with you all today. We've got our larger statewide professional development committee that is looking at the survey results more broadly, but we wanted to get your input on these results and some ideas from the group about how to respond as ACES leaders. So in the survey, we asked about people's familiarity and use with a number of the ACES resources. So the first area was the ACES resource library that's housed on the Atlas website. So as you can see, we had about a third of the people who were administrators who responded said they had used the resource library, so that's great. Not so encouraging is that we had 47% who said they were familiar with the resource, but they hadn't actually used it. And then 25% who said they were not familiar at all with the online resource library. So this is something that's been in place since last year, and we've been promoting it via the ABE Connect newsletter and with managers on our quarterly web chat with managers, as well as at manager meetings and various professional development workshops focused on ACES, so a lot of work going into promotion. We also asked about their familiarity and use of the ACES webinars and videos. So again, we saw about a third of people actually had used those, so that's excellent, but again, a number, almost half said they were familiar but they hadn't used it, and then a quarter who said they were not even familiar with it. Stephanie, if you want to go to the next slide.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And then with some of our newer resources that have become available this year, we have fewer people who are familiar and using the resources. So the ACES 101 online course that was unveiled this year, we had about 17 people who said they've used it. So that's encouraging, but again, quite a few who were not familiar or hadn't used this resource. And the observation tool, only about 15% who had actually taken advantage of that tool and used it. So Stephanie, if you can go to the next slide. What we wanted to do with you for just a few minutes is get your thoughts on any ideas you have that we could use to promote these excellent resources with programs, administrators, and program leaders. There's a wealth of information out there. We've heard from administrators in the survey that they want more support with implementing ACES. So how do we get the word out, and how do we encourage people to use the resources that are out there? So if you can take just a couple minutes to think on that, it would be great to hear an idea from everybody. And we'll bring that to our ACES trainer group next week to start putting some of your ideas in action.
So we are hoping everybody will take a couple minutes to chat out. So unlike at other times today where I've kind of hurried us through the chat time, I'm going to pause here for a couple of minutes, just hoping that people will share some ideas.
Yeah. As people who are actually working as administrators in programs, as leaders in your programs, what would be helpful?
Yes, so one thing Heather says is connecting with folks who might not be program managers, but maybe site leaders or lead teachers, other people who might be in charge of communicating with staff.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Program managers have a lot on their plates.
She says that she's recently spoken with Todd about including ACES and CCRS implementation in a standard new teacher orientation. So is that like the new teacher training that happens at Summer Institute, maybe?
I'm guessing that's what you're referring to, Allie. You can feel free to unmute, but we do actually include information about the 3 sets of the standards in that pre-conference session. And we're going to be working on updating the online course version of the new teacher orientation, which is now being called ABE Foundations, by the way, awesome. For all staff.
I think the idea was not necessarily, because not everyone can make it to Summer Institute, and hours are kind of tough, and so like something that each program can have and kind of tweak as necessary so that they present kind of in person to their new teachers. It wasn't like a finalized idea. Me and Todd were just kind of battling for a while, but that was something I was thinking of that would be really helpful, that I could just like in a PowerPoint kind of do a brief overview that's followed up with that ABE Foundations one.
Okay, so you're thinking of something that would be developed by the state but delivered locally by program managers. Okay. How much time do you think, or to others, in terms of something that would be delivered by local program managers? The actual in-person workshop is about 7 to 9 hours. If you think about what you might want to do at your local level with a new staff person, how many hours would be reasonable?
I think she's asking you, Allie.
I am.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Or anyone else who wants to chime in on that question.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
I just waiting for other people to answer, but I wrote in 5. I would say 5 hours is pretty reasonable.
Okay.
Okay.
And I liked Teresa's idea about having a laptop, or maybe more than, a laptop at the table where Marisa usually sits and has Atlas resources. Maybe it could loop through several different online resources that are available through Atlas, like the resource page, and letting people look at that, maybe put their hands on it. I think that's a neat idea rather than just having the paper stuff.
That's a great idea.
And Betsy says communication with all staff at a particular site, having more people at a site instead of just one that attended the training. Yes. And I
That's
know
about how to do that, Betsy.
Right, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, because we're currently putting the information in the ABE Connect newsletter, which in theory goes out to all staff in the state. That's about how to. And feel free to mute if you want to. I mean, unmute.
So this is Betsy.
Hi, Betsy.
I don't know how to do it. I just know that sometimes just one person goes to the training and then you never really get good information. I mean, the good information isn't always shared with everybody on the staff. Maybe making it known to managers that it's important if only one person is getting the information, that time is given to the staff to meet, to share that information. I don't think we're always good at doing that.
Right.
And it's important.
Yeah.
And I know
I don't know exactly how to do it, but I don't have the answer on how to do it, but I think that's a piece that's missing.
Yes, I would agree.
But all of the resources, putting them up online, you all do such a great job at that. It's really appreciative. I check them often.
Oh, you're that one person, Betsy. Wonderful.
I am the one person.
I like what I know in some programs, including ours in Minneapolis, if you attend a training where you're sort of one of the only ones there from your program, you're supposed to report back somehow, either through a newsletter, article. But I think you're right that then, are people reading the newsletter, or it's not the same experiences of actually going through the training. So, how do you share that?
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone who
thanks anyway for all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
What we hear from managers is that there's just so much competing PD. It's hard to fit everything in. So, oh my goodness, no, we're not going to end the training. So I'm not sure if anyone who is a manager has any thoughts about it at all. Okay. Astrid, do you think you've gotten what you need for right now, as far as ideas go?
Yeah, and I just encourage people to continue thinking about it and share those ideas with us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, speaking of ways to continue sharing your ideas, Summer Institute, the Literacy Action Network, is still looking for people to submit poster session ideas. So the regular sessions have all been submitted, those proposals, but poster sessions are being accepted through the end of the month. And doing a poster is a nice kind of low-key way to share thoughts. In the picture here, you see Rosie Sharkey. She did a poster last year about connecting ACES and CCRS, and her strings were a great visual there. The poster session will be on Thursday afternoon. And, I was surprised last year that you get CEUs for submitting a poster, which was great. That was kind of unexpected for me. I'd never done one before, and I did last year. Melody had a great idea that I missed, so I can't go back and read it. Can you go back up in the chat and read something from before? Oh, I can't.
I can read it.
Oh, okay.
You can go ahead.
Oh, okay. Perhaps the Department of Atlas can issue some general expectations or recommendations about administrative or general program use of the observation tool. Okay. Metro North was very clear at all staff development events regarding the expectations of CCRS on staff. Not so much a mandate, but a clear expectation that these resources should be used to support teachers to implement ACES on an ongoing basis. Yes, so maybe having those guidelines out there would be helpful. Okay. Don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Astrid, representing MDE.
Yes, I think it's a great idea.
Okay. Good. So good. If anyone is interested in doing a poster, you can go to the LAWN website and you just do a quick Survey Monkey. You fill in what your poster is about and submit, and you are done. And again, you know, it's a nice kind of low-key way to share some ideas. If anyone has an ACES lesson that they've been working on, a way to do observation around ACES, any contextualized lessons, we'd love to have you submit a poster. And finally, we are also, the Professional Development Committee is in need of some new members. So here you can see at their last meeting where they had cake, and anyone interested in applying, you can click on this link, and I believe the deadline for that is the 27th of this month. Is that right? I think that's right. So PD committee deadline is May 27th, and the deadline for posters is the 31st. Okay. So that's all of our content. We want to thank you for joining us today. I know several of you have been to all 3 of our ACES Leaders webinars this year. And I want to thank you personally for being here, being an ACES leader. I hope you want to stay involved, and I hope you have a great summer. So thank you.